The day after the Fed pressed pause on hiking rates, economists are looking at the latest numbers for retail sales for the month of May, and they're looking for signs on how the consumers are holding up. Karina Mitchell has the details.
Shop till you drop? Maybe not, but U.S. consumers are still spending despite higher costs, keeping the economy chugging along, at least for now. The Commerce Department reported retail sales for May came in better than expected. That is, consumers continue to be more thoughtful about where and how they choose to spend their disposable income. The headline numbers saw a gain of 0.3% month over month. The estimate was for a loss of 0.1%, based on a Reuters poll of economists. It is the second month of gains after retail sales tumbled in February and March. Looking at specific sectors, sales at auto dealers climbed 1.4% for the month. Sales at food and beverage places rose by 0.4%. Building material and garden equipment sales rose 2.2%, perhaps due to an increase in home renovations for the summer season. Furniture sales also up by 0.4%, and electronics and appliances up 0.2%, while gasoline sales dropped 2.6%, reflecting a drop in gas prices in May. Of course, it all comes on the back of the latest government data out earlier this week that showed consumer prices are continuing to moderate, rising by just 0.1% from April to May. And while the data shows consumers still willing to spend, some are doing so by borrowing and running up credit card debt. As of the end of May, U.S. consumers owed nearly $1 trillion on charge cards and other types of loans. That's a record amount, according to the Federal Reserve. Karina Mitchell, CGTN, New York.
The vast majority of shoppers are law-abiding citizens, but there is a minority that's causing a big headache for retailers, shoplifters. They are shoplifting or stealing products right off the shelf in large-scale organized ways. In 2020, members of the National Retail Federation say that such crimes went up more than 26%. Now, within the past 9 months or so, half of all retail and grocery workers witnessed a theft or attempted theft in the store. A third say that they have experienced violent situations with the customer. This is what's known as retail shrink, which includes losses from shoplifting and organized retail crime. That's cost U.S. retailers nearly $95 billion in 2001. That's up from $91 billion in 2020. And for more on this, we're joined by Christopher Lacy. He's a partner and chief operations office and industry consultant group, Fashion Consort. He's an assistant professor at the New School of Parsons Designs in New York City. Good to have you on the show. So I kind of have two feelings for this. One, stop the shoplifting. Two, we've heard companies come out and say it's really bad and it's terrible, it's destroying our company. And then they come out later and says, well, it wasn't so bad. Which one is it?
Well, Phil, I guess, it's a little bit of both, because it always depends on how you look at the numbers, right? So in one way, it is bad. Organized crime is equating to about 37% of shrink for retail companies. But another number that's actually more startling is that 25% is simply due to procedure and control measures that can be handled within the company. So when they kind of look at it, they go, well, yes, shoplifting is bad, but internally there are things that we need to do from an operational perspective or a financial perspective to help us mitigate those losses.
I have a business that is right next to Target. Okay, I am one of Target's, one of few stores that works with Targets, and I work very closely with their security staff. And I have witnessed dozens of people walking in, taking stuff, and walking out. And by the way, there's security at Target literally as you exit the door. And I've asked the security folks, I said, well, why don't you stop these? Why don't you stop it? And they say they're instructed by their superiors to not stop people from leaving the store with merchandise. In other words, they have no power, right? So, but there's dozens of these folks that work there as security, but they don't actually do the securing. And my question to you is, well, what's the point of that? I mean, if we're not going to prosecute them, if the police aren't going to show up, if nobody seems to care that this is even a crime, then let's just not call it a crime. I mean, it doesn't make sense. It's bad for employees. It scares young people who are working in these stores who are typically their first or second or third jobs. it's a safety issue as well for employees.
Yeah, I think the first mode is someone being present there who might be a loss prevention associate. It does deter those who might want to steal impulsively, right? Like they didn't enter the store with the intent to steal. Those people who enter a store with the intent to steal, chances are you're not going to be able to stop them. And most policies and procedures that many retail companies have employed is simply because they have tried to stop people in the past, and there's been legal repercussions to that. So really, it's now at a point where those who are just kind of stealing with intent, they allow them to leave. And so it has become a terrible situation. Now, on the plus side, the Retail Federation has really started working with federal government to start imposing more harsh sentences against those who are committing those crimes. And so we'll just have to see how this plays out
Right.
over the next few years.
And look, I don't want to get political about this, but I don't know how you can't have this discussion and be realistic and get political. There are cities in the U.S. that are more lenient, if you will, to this crime. And those are the same cities that are losing important retailers that are fabric of their city. You know, I'm talking about drugstores, grocery stores, department stores, and San Francisco is one example. These stores are leaving the city. They're losing jobs. It's creating a worse environment for those that are left in the city who need these services, albeit whether it's getting prescription drugs or buying shampoo or just simply a normal day of shopping. And these companies are voting by closing the store. At some point, there's going to be a sea change by city councils and mayors who say, wait a minute, safety is important because without that, these companies aren't going to stay here.
Well, I think this is the crux of the issue in the U.S., right? If we look at where most of the theft is happening, pharmacies are number one, and then number two being big box retailers. Specialty stores fall at number 5 on the list. So I think the bigger concern that we should be asking, and if we look at a city like San Francisco, where there's a high rate of poverty and homelessness simply because the city itself is so expensive to live in, is how do we address the issue that people are stealing necessities? We're going into stores and toothpaste is locked up or deodorant is locked up. So we've really got to start to figure out that part of the solution because those thefts are necessity thefts. I think when we start looking at specialty thefts in those stores, that's organized crime where they're going in, they're stealing multiple items. And so that's a different type of
help our audience. I think I know what you're talking about when you say organized crimes, but I think of people with guns. When you mean organized crimes, it's not quite that. Our international audience might not be aware of the specifics of what you're referring to when you say an organized crime. What do you mean by that?
Right. So there's actually areas and populations, and New York is definitely one of them, where you have a group of individuals that have actually planned. They're planning to go to multiple stores. They're hitting multiple locations, either using booster bags, either using, credit card scanners, and they're stealing multiple items. There's run and grabs that are happening, and that's happening like across our larger cities, especially in big retailers and even those specialty retailers. And so that's a bigger issue that they're looking to solve for.
Christopher, a topic I don't want to talk about, but I think it's important that we are talking about it. Appreciate your time on this.